Hello and welcome back to Loud and Proud Orlando here for another Pride Pod. We've got a very special episode for you this week. We've already talked about San Diego last week, so today we are blessed to have the one and only GM of Orlando Pride herself, Haley Carter. Haley, thank you for being here with Luis and myself.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I was rocking out to that intro music. It was sweet.
Yeah, I mean, you like the highlights too, right? Some nice
Yeah,
goals in
yeah. We
there.
gotta we gotta get you some new highlights.
We
That's
gotta get new highlights.
that's
Yeah,
We're
that's
gonna
archive footage right there. Yeah.
There's no
yeah,
banda in the highlights. That's the
yeah.
problem. We need
Yeah.
some banda in there. Luis, introduce yourself to Haley. I don't think you've met.
No,
Hi, Luis.
how are you? How are
Haley.
you, Haley? No, it's a pleasure. It's definitely great to have you here. I think it's been a whole turnaround of not only of a season, but also a lot of positive vibes within the club. So, I mean, it's amazing how the culture is shaping with you, Seb, and Giles. So, we'll look forward to talking to you regarding all of that today.
Sounds good. Love it.
Luis, kick us off with your first question for Haley.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously Orlando Pride had a history of some turmoil, the GM, head coach, some player situations since the club was founded in 2016. What was the situation you inherited when you took the Pride GM job back on April 25th?
Yeah. So, um, I think I'll just sort of start from the beginning as far as like my hiring process. Erin McLeod and I are good friends. One of the reasons I came to Orlando is she had reached out to me, and we were like day ones together in Houston. And she's somebody who I respect and admire quite a bit. And she had called me many months before the GM position opened, and because we've always kept in touch. I mean, we have been close for a long time, and she was really sort of struggling with things and trying to navigate them. And when she reached out to me about the position um, coming open, I was like, "Do you remember when you called me about 6 months ago? Like, and you weren't so sure about the environment in Orlando. Like, why on earth would I want to throw myself into that?" And she was really open and honest, and she said, I think the new ownership group and leadership with Jared and Caesar, and their change is coming, and you'd have the opportunity to really come in and build something. And she's like, "You're one of the few people that I would trust to come in and help us fix this environment." And so I said, "Okay, all right, well, here's my resume, you can send it over to Jared." And it just worked out that Bloom Sports, who is a sports sort of executive consultancy company, had reached out as well. And so, Jared got my resume from a couple different directions, and I set up a call. I think the first sort of casual conversation that I had with with Caesar and Jared was the Friday after Thanksgiving in 2022. And I didn't officially start until like January 30th or 31st. So it was a really long, arduous interview process, many rounds, presentations, conversations, personality tests. There was a math test at one point.
Wow.
Um, and I finally I got to the point where in the end, when it was getting down to, there was two of us that were left. I had felt like, well, if I don't get this job, they feel confident and comfortable with who they're hiring. And if I do get this job, I feel confident and comfortable going into it, and they feel confident and comfortable with me. So it was it really was a sort of a good match. I would not have come in if I didn't feel like the Wilfs were serious about investing in the Pride, and if our values didn't align with one another. I wasn't desperate for a job in the NWSL. Yes, I have a background in leadership and in law and in sport and coaching and playing. Like, I've navigated, I help with the undercurrent of establishing the Players Association. I mean, I've been around a little bit. But I wasn't desperate for a job in the NWSL, and I certainly wasn't going to get into it if I didn't feel like it was a good fit, because the NWSL can be a terrifying place to work for staff. It's just a reality. And so I say that just to sort of set the tone, that I think that when I came into it, it was clear that the Wilfs were serious about investing in the Pride, but that we had a long way to go. And when I met with Seb on my sort of final in-person interview, we talked about those sorts of things, and sort of the task in front of the head coach and the vice president and general manager like laid out, and what that could look like, and what the timeline could be, and what were realistic expectations. And, I think for us, it really was about just establishing a consistent foundation for athletes and for staff, that we wanted to really eliminate churn. You're right. And that the ownership groups, the front office, the head coaches, athletes, there was a lot of churn in Orlando, and we wanted to stop that. So starting from there, and then just creating an environment where people enjoy coming to work, and it's a game, and yeah, it's serious, and where it's professional, but it's a game. And if we're not having fun, if we're not enjoying ourselves, and we're not creating an environment where others are enjoying themselves, then we really we're doing it wrong, and we need to rethink that. So it just came into an environment that was hungry for change, fortunately, and was open to it. And the individuals who that I work with and support and lead are open to change, and it was just it sort of fit like a glove. And Seb and I working together, we have a really, really good relationship that I don't think you see replicated anywhere else in the NWSL. So that helps.
I mean, definitely. I think that's all of what we suspected, but never obviously knew for sure. I think the fact that you came into it knowing all of that and what you had to deal with has been reflected in the way that you have.
I knew a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, and that led me really perfectly onto our second question, which is, you've spoken openly before about your policy with players, and that I kind of see as like, if you don't want to be here, then we'll let you go kind of model. And we saw that with Messiah. I know it's something that you have opted as like a policy for this team. Can you tell us like why you went about that? And you probably maybe have answered that already.
Yeah, I think the reality is a lot of things can happen in an athlete's life. A lot of things can happen in a staff member's life as well, right? That can kind of change their priorities and their perspective and their approach on things. And, I think some can say that from a business perspective, it's bad business, but I mean, is it bad business? Treating people with value, if any of the three of us get a job anywhere, we have the ability to leave that job at any given time. And ultimately they're under contract with the NWSL. They're not under contract with Orlando. And so there's that. But I think also never underestimate the power of discontent in a locker room. If somebody doesn't want to be in an environment and you try forcing them to be in it, like, these athletes are not indentured servants. Okay.
That's right.
They're people. And we want to see them be successful, and we want them to be successful in our environment. But if there's something that happens, or they have a desire to go and be successful elsewhere, like, I'm not going to limit that. Because the reality is there is an entire world of talented footballers that are available. And there are athletes who want to be here, who are bought into what we're building. And, the number of phone calls right now while we sit at the top of the table that I'm receiving from agents is at an all-time high. But I have to believe that when you do right by people, it works out for you. And I think, so far you can see that it does. And, it's when it comes to trades, any trades that we make are coordinated with the athletes. The athletes are a part of it, and that's how RSTP works. If you guys don't know what RSTP is, it's the FIFA regulations that sort of govern the transfer of footballers. And anytime you do a transfer, the player has to consent. And trades, because it's a single entity league, their contract is with the NWSL. Technically, they don't have to consent. But, again, you want athletes to be a part of that conversation, and they should have sort of agency in what their career looks like. And, so that's how we operate. And if you have an athlete who doesn't want to be here, well, there's plenty of other athletes who do. So
No, no, tying into that question, obviously talking about the athletes, you have found, especially in this Pride team, a lot of success is signing players who might have been, a little bit overlooked out of their other squads or previous squads, like, Morgan, Angelina, Luana. Tell us a little bit about how do you go about your transfer and scouting? How do you look for a potential, new Pride signing? I know that on the other end of the pond, we see, there's a low cost, high reward. Certain teams do that.
yeah.
Other teams maybe look at name recognition. What's the Pride style essentially now?
So, we have a staff, right? That we've got a director of scouting and analytics. We've got a talent identification scout. Myself and Seb and the technical and staff are involved in those conversations. We have position specific profiles. We're looking at the data and we're looking at the numbers. But what I will tell you, our number one factor is whether or not they're good people, and whether or not they're going to fit into the culture that we're building. Because I'll tell you, the culture we're building is not for everyone. If you want to come in and you want to just demand minutes and think that you are going to get them and deserve them, then this culture probably isn't for you. If you're a person who wants to put the team's success above your own success, and you really buy into that, and into the team values that we have, then you're the type of athlete that we want. Like I said, there's a whole world of talented footballers out there. So, that's kind of where we start. And then, we look at, what their contribution is. And I'll tell you, like, we just announced Grace, right? Grace is not a keep Barbara Banda happy signing, to be abundantly clear. Grace is somebody that we kept an eye on for a long time. In the lead up to the World Cup, she came down with an illness right before the World Cup. So she was knocked out of the World Cup, and she's been out for about 8 months. I'm not going to go into the details of what that illness was, because it's not anybody's business. But what I will tell you is that she has worked very, very hard to come back from that. And she's in a good position now, as we will help her with match fitness. But she is an unbelievable signing. And if there were ever a Moneyball signing in the NWSL, if people knew what we paid for her, she's on a free transfer. So if you knew what her salary was, you would be shocked at the value that we're going to get with her. And it's because we tracked her, and I followed up with her, and I knew what was happening in her personal life. I knew what was happening off the field. And I was willing to take a chance on her because I know what she's capable of doing on the field. And you have a lot of athletes like that where things will happen that they just, I don't want to say that they get discarded, but they almost just get forgotten about, and the market forgets about them, and people aren't paying attention to that. But those of us who are really involved in the game are watching and know what's happening behind the scenes, and things that the average casual fan and even some of the more serious fans may not know is going on. And we're willing to take chances on that. And, you look at Angelina tore her ACL and then struggled to get minutes with Seattle, and we jumped on that. That Seattle's loss is certainly our gain. You look at Morgan, Morgan and I played together in Houston. She was a rookie. She was one of our draft picks when I was playing in Houston. And so we have a relationship that goes back a long time, and I know what she's fully capable of. I knew exactly what was going on with her injuries and her concussion history and all of that stuff. And so these are highly deliberate, and there is a lot of due diligence that goes into signing the athletes that we sign. What they're like off the field, what's going on in their lives, what they value, what they care about, not just their performance. So now we've got a collection of athletes who, are not only capable of performing well on the field, but really gel together, because we know what we're getting when we sign them. And they know what they're coming into. It's that diligence is a two-way street, right? So we're very transparent and very upfront about, what our culture is, what our values are, and what our priorities are. And again, it's not something for everyone. We've had conversations with athletes who, for one reason or another, were not not as receptive to what we're building. But yeah, so.
We can definitely see that in the not only the way the team plays, but in the general camaraderie. Just they're a unit. You can tell 100% they play for each other. The way they celebrate goals, the way they just interact with each other constantly on all the social media.
Listen, you guys have heard it in post press, like
Yeah.
the having a good time all the time.
Yeah.
Emily Sam's quote is real. Like, yes, we like to give her a hard time about it because it's funny, but that's genuine. Like, it's not. It is authentic. All of us are having a good time, and I think, we're going on 11 games undefeated. That's not going to last forever. It would be unrealistic to think that it would, but we've navigated hard times together. I will tell you guys, off the field, this group of athletes has navigated some really hard shit this year. Between injuries and Luana, and it's been hard. There have been games where I have been proud of them just for showing up, and then they show up and they go and they ball out. And I think, it's interesting because there's a lot, the NWSL and things that happen in the NWSL are not as transparent as things that you see happen in like men's leagues, right? In MLS, like you see everybody's salaries and you know exactly what's going on and everything's really transparent. And the NWSL, that's less true. So I think there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that, fans aren't necessarily aware of or cognizant of. And so we try to tell those stories, but obviously I'm also very protective of the players. And so there are things that I tell our public relations and social media team they can't share. But they have navigated some really hard things. And I think it's been a unifying force for them. And it's true of the staff as well. The staff has had a few hard weeks too. So this has not been an easy start to the season. So for us to be as successful as we have been, I think really is a testament to genuinely the culture that we're building, and the group of athletes and staff that we have in the building at Sylvan is really, really something special.
And we talked about you adding those other pieces like Angelina, Morgan, the overlooked other players that fill out this squad, but the big star that's come in has been Barbara, obviously. She's made an instant impact. When we were talking about her coming on the podcast, we were looking at her record and we were like, this is not real, right? This is insane. She's got more goals than games played for Zambia, etc. Then she gets here and she is that star. She's got 8 goals in 7 games. Did you know that she was going to be as successful as she has been? Yes. You had no doubt in your mind, huh?
I had no doubt in my mind. Zero. I did enjoy the 40 days though between when we started working on it and when everything finalized, trying to convince Mark Wilf that the $740,000 transfer fee was worth it.
It's not that much if you got an NFL team.
Are we sure she's Mark? I'm sure. I'm positive. So yeah, there wasn't any uncertainty in my mind. And again, that's another one where we made a lot of phone calls. We talked to Lisa Cole about it. We talked to Lisa Cole about Grace Chanda as well. She was the technical advisor to the Zambian women's national team during the World Cup, just to ask okay, well, but what are they like off the field? And how does Barbara interact with her teammates? Because a lot of times you get an athlete like that, right? And there's quite an ego that follows with them. And Barbara, that's not the case with Barbara. Barbara is a very humble, down-to-earth athlete who just wants to be the best. And she wants to play with the best. And she wants to get better every day. So she shows up and she works hard. And, and she also is joy. Like her and Grace both just really, really love to play the game. And, seeing Barbara with Marta and, sort of this younger version of herself and all of the things she's trying to pass on to Barbara, it's actually a lot of fun. But yeah, Barbara, signing of my career, I should probably just throw the towel in now because it's not getting any better than that.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I will tell you guys, it was hard work. And one day I could probably write a book on the lawyering and posturing and phone calls to people in high places around the world that had to happen to get that transfer done. but it was, I remember Bay had announced the Rachel Kundananji transfer, and I had known about it for 3 or 4 weeks before it finally went public. And but when it went public, that night I did not sleep. I was like, I have to go after Barbara Banda. And so at like 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd gotten up because I was getting ready to go in and work out, and I saw an email from Don Becker, who sits on our board, and he was just talking about it was an article about Bay spending money on it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I drafted up an email. I called Seb. I said, Seb, I'm going to be late coming into the office today because I'm working on something. And he was like, okay, no problem, whatever. And I put together an email. I put together a business case. I sent it to the board. I pulled them together for an emergency board meeting. I was like, we got to go do this. All it took was Bay going after Rachel, and that kind of turned the transfer market upside down. So I was like, now is the time. I knew what her buyout clause was because obviously I'd spoken with her agent already. And so we just went for it. And I like told Seb that day, I was like, I'm going to make this happen. Come hell or high water. I don't care the phone calls or the favors I have to pull or the lawyering and commercial posturing. I don't care what it takes. Like, we're going to make this happen. And now Barbara's here. So,
you know, and it seemed like it was the missing piece, you know, to the puzzle, right? And
yeah,
you know, now with a young core of players, you know, you got Carrie Avello, you got Emily Sams, you got Summer Yates, you know,
Summer, Corey
right.
Dyke, Bree Martinez,
right? Yeah. And how do you now Banda's here with Emma Hayes' arrival in the national team? You know, do you think, you know, maybe they're also going to get some eyes on the players I just mentioned for maybe future USA call-ups?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, like, I think what people have to understand is, like, there are pools, player pools, and provisional rosters. We have athletes on the provisional roster. And so, you know, I think that they're being scouted and they're being looked at. And I think right now, you kind of have to put yourself in Emma's shoes, right? Like, she wants to go in and win right away at the Olympics, right? And she's got to determine an 18-player roster. Look at the current call-up list. Look at who's in camp right now. Look at who's on the roster for this evening and who played earlier this week. If you're really splitting hairs to get down to 18 athletes. And so right now the focus is figuring out who those 18 athletes are. And it has to be, right? So, but I think beyond that, you know, once we come out of the Olympics and really essentially a new World Cup cycle starts, I think naturally you're going to start to see more athletes being considered and called in for camp and for friendlies. And that includes athletes on our roster. It includes other athletes on other NWSL rosters. So, you know, I know fans really want to see Orlando Pride players in with the national team right now. But if you think about it pragmatically and realistically, the intent of these camps right now is to figure out what that 18-player roster is going to be. And that's going to be a really, really tough job. So, you know, for me, and you talk about the youth of these players, those players have long careers ahead of them. And so I think, you know, we just have to keep in mind that they very likely could be in longer term plans, but right now there's a very short term specific task that Emma and the U.S. national team staff have in front of them. And so we just have to keep that in mind, right? Like and our athletes know that, right? These are conversations we have with the athletes, and so they're managing it. So I think fans sometimes are more disappointed than the athletes are because they've got a pretty good grasp on what their status is and things they can be working on.
I completely agree with your entirely logical answer, but I'm still sad.
I know you guys.
No, I mean, yes, that's obviously.
I know. I don't get to be emotional in my position.
We get to be like, wait, what about Carrie Avello? Come on, like that's our job to scream and rave. Yeah. And yeah, I think the one where NWSL it left out no Pride players from April and May.
Listen,
April and
I'm
March
tell
was
you
probably
guys,
the most outrage I've had to have.
Fans hate that. We love that.
Right.
We thrive off of that. The more disrespect, the better. Like, I literally could not have paid the NWSL and all of the media outlets out there who voted on that for a better motivational tool. It's almost like it was by design. Like we eat that up. And now, granted, obviously, like we know it was March and April, and Barbara hadn't quite gotten here yet. But like, how do you miss Ange? How do you miss Ange? But you know what?
Sams. I mean, Emily Sams for
That's
us. I mean,
fine.
for me,
Yeah, to me,
Yes.
even
So,
same.
we thrive off of that, to be honest. Like, people have thought we were shit for like 2 seasons now, so it's all right. People can continue to think that we're shit. We can sit at the top of the table, and we're going to continue to tell ourselves that people think we're shit. So, that
Orlando versus everybody. That's how we like
Yeah,
it here.
that's right.
we will ride that narrative for as long as we can, because the reality is it is how we feel. It's how the athletes feel. It's how the staff feel. Like, there have been a few that have seen the potential and what was coming. I think Lori Lindsay's one of them last year, and Jill Lloyd, and there's a couple who kind of could see the foundation, but it's all right. You guys get mad about it. Get as mad as you want. We love that too.
It's loud and proud for a reason.
Yeah, we love that. Fans be outraged. We're just going to use it as fuel. So it's all right.
You're talking about the fans. I want to ask you, obviously a huge turnaround of the team, and slowly the team is performing, getting the numbers, getting the points, top of the league. And we've seen an increase, numbers in, people in at the wall, people, the Black Swans as well. Obviously, always faithful and loyal. I remember, seeing them since I first started covering the team. And also, you have a lot of Orlando City fans like coming in and
Starting to come
just
over.
outpouring support to the Pride like I've never seen before. How does that make you feel, and how does that make the players feel also? And you see it in other countries. Like, for example, I'm originally from Peru. Women's soccer there is growing really slow, but there's really not that difference between one team and the other. It's like the same crowd goes and supports both teams.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you think we're going to get to that at one point?
I hope so. I hope so. We talk about this one club mentality, and so, I certainly hope so. I will tell you that you can feel the difference in the stadium, right? Like, you guys have been there and seen it, and there's a big difference between 4,000, 5,000, and 9,000.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know if you guys heard, but we were talking about after the Portland game, like, Portland was struggling to hear what was going on, which I love, because when you play in their stadium, you can't hear shit anyway. Like, we can't hear anything. So I thought it was hilarious that a team that comes from playing in that environment is complaining about how they can't hear anything. They can't hear each other on the field with our like 9,952 fans. So, imagine the stress and chaos and anxiety that teams are going to have, when we really start to fill up Enrico Stadium. And I can't say enough about the constant improvements that are happening in the front office as well, from a marketing standpoint, and brand alliances, and really focusing on partnerships with the Pride and investment in the Pride. Like, it is a whole team effort. And so it really matters to us. Like, we talk about the 12th man, like that, it does make a difference. And, everyone wants to play in a full stadium, and I appreciate that the affinity for the Pride is growing from city fans. And I think the more that they come out, and our job is to put a good product on the field, and that's what we're working on. And, that's my job, and that's my focus. And, but as we put a good product on the field, it is really nice to start to see that reap rewards in terms of attendance, and because these athletes deserve it. They
Yeah,
deserve
definitely.
a big crowd.
Finally, Haley, like we always do a wild card question whenever we have a guest on. Maybe there's something you want to ask us, or maybe you have a question you want to ask the fans, or something we haven't talked about. I kind of have a little one for you first.
Okay, you go first.
As you are ex-goalkeeper,
Yeah.
and we've had some controversy around our goalkeeper position.
Yeah.
My fellow English person in Anna Morehouse
Yeah.
has had some struggles, but has
I
really
knew that you
turned
guys
it
were going to ask about this.
really turned it around. No, she has. We've been impressed with
Yes.
her recently.
No, she has.
But my question is actually about our other goalkeeper, because I was very excited when we signed Sophia Manor, but we have
Yep.
yet to see her.
Yep.
It might be something you can't tell us anything about, but I gotta ask, what's
Well,
going
I'll
on?
just tell you, I think Sophia came into preseason with some injuries, which we've navigated. She's still kind of adjusting to the training load, the climate, and a couple of other things. So we actually had a meeting with her today. She's doing really well. The last couple of weeks have been really good weeks for her. So, but yeah, there were some things that she came into preseason that we navigated, and and the reality is as well, like Anna is putting good games together. And we talk about this. Like, I see all the things that people post on social media. I just don't tend to care. Because again, you're not in the training environment, and I think when you're in the training environment, you see the work that all of our goalkeepers are putting in. We've got 4 goalkeepers. We have McKinley Crone, Sophia Manor, and Kenna Caldwell. They're in our environment every day, and the work that they're putting in, and how much they work together to ensure that they're successful. And you see the growth of Anna. If you look at Anna in her first season, last year was her second season. This is her third season. She has come a very, very long way from the days when she was playing behind Aaron McLeod. And that is taking confidence. It's taken a lot of work on the field and off the field with our staff and working with her. But the reality is, like, she's made some big time saves this year. And, people will look at like the goal that she gave up against Washington. Okay, well, Caitlin Rowland literally just passed the ball to Ella Stevens. And Caitlin Rowland's a very good goalkeeper. Alyssa Nair passed the ball to Janine Becky, who almost scored a goal had it not glanced off of Sophia Smith's hand. So the reality is, every goalkeeper in this league is down for one solid question mark. Every single one of them. And so, if you're going to judge an entire athlete's career or season by, giving up a goal that, yeah, should I think it had been saved? Absolutely. Like, did we have a conversation with it after the game? Absolutely. Was I frustrated as shit? Yes. But again, I don't get to be emotional in this position. Like, we make decisions based on facts and what we see. And the reality is, like, Anna is putting the numbers up, and she's doing well. The team trusts her, and that's the same of the other goalkeepers as well. It's a very, very, very tight race. And that was the intent, right? That was the intent. We want to create a very, very competitive goalkeeper union. So, yeah, I'm going to back Anna, and I'm confident in the decisions that our coaching staff makes whenever they put a starting lineup together. And that doesn't mean we don't have conversations about it. It doesn't mean we don't challenge each other on it. But
yeah, I mean, I imagine Paul is a huge part of that, right? I mean, it's also Doncaster Rovers, as well.
Yeah.
Anna, played for Doncaster. I feel like we've seen her develop and grow so much, like you said, this season, and now she's got #1 in clean sheets in the league this year, and I think confidence is everything in the goalkeeper position.
It really is.
Totally agree that we hyper-analyze them.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
It's because we see the mistakes so clearly, Haley.
There's a legacy thing here in Orlando around goalkeepers and evaluating goalkeepers that I won't
we
get
like
into.
to overanalyze.
But I think sometimes it's a little bit unfair.
It is.
Like, I think criticism when it's due, those are conversations that are had. But also I think, yeah, Anna's done really well, and she's grown a lot. She's developing into a really solid leader as well, within the locker room and on the field. And so, I'm happy with her performance this season for sure.
It makes me happy to have one English player on the team. So if you could sign a few more English players.
Well, now that she's got a green card, I mean, is she really?
Yeah. Well, yes, she's an Anglo-American now. We're both. Luis has a final question for you.
I wanted to ask you, you talk about the NWSL. That's obviously the league that we're currently playing. What are your thoughts about the USL Super League?
Oh,
And
that's a good question. I get asked that question a lot, and I think people think my answer is going to be somewhat controversial, but it really isn't. I am a proponent of any additional opportunities for women in this country to be able to play professional soccer.
it's awesome.
We have a massive country, massive market. And when you look
Yeah.
at, right now we've got 14 teams in the NWSL, each carrying an active roster of 26 athletes. That's not very many people.
Yeah.
And so I think to give more women the opportunity to play professional football I'm always going to be supportive of that. And I think as well, it also is attractive to a different kind of athlete, right? Like I think about myself whenever I transitioned and was retiring from playing NWSL, I could still play at a high level. So I went and played and coached in a WPSL team, right? If the USL Super League had existed in Houston, I probably would have just gone and done that, where I'd have a little bit more flexibility. And that's not to say that they're less professional or their schedules are less demanding, but it's more to say that there are clubs in markets that aren't where NWSL teams are. So you look at Erica Timrak, right? For instance,
Right.
when we announced Erica Timrak, there was a reason why we didn't announce her as retiring. Because we knew where she was going to go and we wanted her to have that opportunity. And she's from Tampa. She's a St. Pete girl.
Yeah.
So for her to be able to go home and continue playing at a high level in the market that she grew up in, that's really special.
Amazing.
So be able to give athletes opportunities like that. And I think it's exciting. And again, I think also for the fans, I think anything we can do to grow the women's game, grow visibility of the women's game, and get people out supporting athletes in women's sports, period, is really exciting. So, I also want to be ahead of the game in terms of potential loan and transfer opportunities and things like that. So
Will we see an I-4 derby again, kind of like
Yeah.
at some point, even as a friendly?
We'll see.
Maybe?
Yeah, we'll
The
see.
league,
It's
well, they
right,
gotta
at this
talk to
point, we're
each
going to
other.
have like 3 USL Super League teams in the next
Yeah.
3 years, right? 3 years. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's always opportunity for that. So we'll see. But I'm a big
we're
proponent of
excited.
Super League, and their leadership, Amanda Vandervoort with Super League, is down at USL in Tampa is one of my best friends, and she is one of the most brilliant minds in women's football on the planet. And so for them to have her sort of leading the charge and putting things together is also really exciting. I think it's got a bright future. So, yeah.
Well, we're very excited to see in the summer how the Pride stacks up against these Mexican teams out of Liga MX Femenil.
Mhm.
So
I'm excited to see. Rayadas just won the championship.
I
So,
know.
yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
ready
they're
to
coming
see
to
that.
town.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be great.
So I'm excited. They have a athlete who was during 2014 in the first year of the Dash. She came in and she trialed for a little bit. She's a Guatemalan player who I'm excited to see because I haven't seen her in a long time. But
Potential scouting here.
Yeah.
Haley, we want to thank you so much for coming here on the podcast to answer all of our questions. I just want to say personally that you've done an amazing job, and everything you said that you've done, you are achieving and more. So thank you so much. And obviously you're just one part of this machine, like Seb
Sure.
Hines, Giles,
Sure.
Yolanda, Paul, everybody. I can tell every single player on this team is bought in. All of the staff are bought in, and you're leading the way. And we want to tell you from the Pride perspective, from the fans' perspective of the Pride, we see this. We appreciate it so much. And Luis has been covering the team for years. I've been a fan for years, and we've never been more excited about the Orlando Pride, and that is all down to you and everybody that's doing all this amazing hard work. So thank you.
Well,
Luis,
thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, it is a team effort. It is top to bottom. Everyone in our environment is contributing and plays a role in it. So I just happen to be fortunate to be accountable for it all. Credit is always shared, but accountability is singular. So yeah, it's a really great place to be, and I genuinely wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now. So yeah.
I want to also thank you so much for being here, and we will definitely continue to do as much as we can to help grow the club and get more butts in seats for sure. We're trying to turn some non-believers into believers, right? With the
Yeah.
product that we see on the pitch and every weekend. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for everything that you do. It's like I said, thanks for covering it. I know it takes time. You guys like get in the car and do your post-game debriefs, and it's
I'm
a lot.
driving.
It's not easy. So, you guys also don't have any days off, obviously. So, no, just thank you guys for all of the work that you do. And it's important work. I think the more you can tell the stories and the more people we get talking about it. And the reality is, like, you guys are growing the fan base. Like, I see how many people are logging in, and you guys know, you've seen your numbers, and people that are calling in and listening to it are increasing. So you should feel really proud of yourselves. But also just know we all really appreciate it. Like, every little bit counts. And that was really why it was a priority for me to get on here, because I think the grassroots efforts to cover these teams and clubs in the market, it really matters. And sometimes you don't always get the guests or the coverage or the visibility. And so it was really important for me to be able to prioritize getting on with you guys. So thanks for having me.
We love it. And there's so many new Zambian fans that we are enjoying. They're watching everything that we're doing. So
They
if
are
you're one of
camping
our
out on the
Zambian
Facebook
fans,
page.
yes, hello to everybody there. Welcome. You're awesome.
Yes.
Welcome
Zambia
to
Cuchalo.
Yes, we're and also all of our Brazilian. We're a global fan base here at Orlando Pride and LPO. So it's great to see. And we want to say one more time, thank you so much for coming on. You can, of course, support us and subscribe at Loud and Proud Orlando on YouTube. We have the Pride Pod that usually goes out on Tuesday nights, but this week you're getting a special interview. So we'll be back next Tuesday. This Friday, we've got the game against San Diego Wave away at our Californian rivals. I think they're kind of our rivals. Maybe Haley can shed some light on that another time.
I don't like any team in this league.
I don't like Alex Morgan, but we'll get into that now.
Again, I don't get to be emotional, but just know I don't like any team in this league. I'm pretty equal opportunity.
Love that. Yeah, we need to develop some rivalry here for the Pride. Yeah. We need an enemy.
You've already said it. It's Orlando versus the world. It's us versus everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed what you've heard, you can obviously catch us later on Spotify, Apple Music. You can find us on social media at LPO_podcast on X and on Instagram and on Facebook as Loud and Proud Orlando. Haley, hopefully you will join us here at the end, as we always like to on LPO. We sign off with a big Vamos Pride. So, Luis, lead us in, bud.
Vamos Pride.
Vamos Pride.